Hi Fox, how are you doing? The first game of the fourth round of the candidates is over, and well, I'm not going to tell the results, but due to the request of one of my kind viewers, so I will just tell this was a very interesting game, and you shouldn't miss all the crazy tactical lines, all the variations we're gonna see. So the game was played between Vichy Anand with white pieces and Kramnik with black, and there we go with it. Anand plays 1d4. Really kind of a surprise, as he usually has been playing 1e4 as white. And I just remember that game, one of those games in the World Championship match between these two players in Germany, when Anand played e4, just surprising, absolutely stunning Kramnik, who was there for some minutes thinking what to play. Now this kind of a thing happened here, I think. So knight f6, c4, e6. Of course, this is the main defense against d4 for Kramnik, the Nimzo-Indian. But Anand doesn't go for it. Knight f3. Instead, some people were thinking he could go for the f3 Nimzo-Indian, reminding us of some epic battles very recently. But instead, he goes with knight f3, and Kramnik plays d5. He doesn't usually go for the Queen's Indian defense with b6. He plays d5 rather. Knight c3, and Kramnik kind of makes a little surprise here. Surprising move. He takes on c4. Now bishop e7 is much more common for Kramnik to play. The Queen's Gambit decline, the classical way of playing this. And also in the last candidates, for instance, he played the c5, the semi-Tarrasch. He had prepared that. But now he plays, after knight c3, d takes c4. And now the things go really wild here. Very interesting game is going to be played. Anand plays e4, which is more or less one of the main lines. Another possibility is to play e3, and well, in which case something like c5. This is the main move in this kind of position to counterattack the center would be played probably. The main line goes like bishop takes c4, a6, a4, knight c6, castle, bishop e7, queen e2, c takes d4, rook d1, etc. So very well-known position, this one. But Anand rather plays e4, much sharper in my opinion. Bishop b4, of course threatening to take with the knight on e4, now that the knight on c3 is pinned. So white pins black knight on his turn, so he's avoiding knight takes e4 and is kind of threatening to play e5. c5 is played here, and there we go. We start with some variations here. Anand plays bishop takes c4, very principled. Another chance was to play e4. It seems really natural looking. You're kind of trapping a piece. And here black's answer would be probably c takes d4, attacking a knight at the same time. And a couple of options here, just a couple of options for white, just to illustrate. Of course, there are bunches of moves here. For instance, if knight takes d4, now queen a5, attacking c3 twice. And if e takes f6, now black queen is attacking g5 as well. So this is the drawback of taking the knight on f6. Now black could play bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and take on g5. Instead, if black takes on c3, incredibly king e2, and after queen b2 check, for instance, king f3, white is winning. He has his up material, and well, it is not clear that black can attack white king that easily. And once again here, if bishop d2, of course black could take on d4. What else? What else after e5, c takes d4? Well, white has another move here, for instance, one of many other moves he has. he has queen a4 check, knight c6, and here it is very interesting and razor sharp. Will castling long with a very crazy position. Both knights on c3 and f6 are under attack. The rook is on their open file, kind of open file, opposing black queen, so this is a very tactical position, really a mess, but still this is kind of theoretical. So after c5, e5 could happen, as we saw, but bishop takes c4 was played by Anand. Now c takes d4, knight takes d4, and bishop takes c3 check. Well, other possibility, queen a5. Now black is threatening lots of things, threatening c3 with the rook, the bishop and the queen, threatening the bishop on g5 with the queen, and threatening to take, for instance, the pawn on e4 with the knight. So here bishop d2 seems logical, kind of protecting everything. Otherwise, if bishop takes f6, now bishop takes, b takes, queen takes, and king f1 for instance, but queen takes c4 once again with check. Once again we have a unbalanced position. White king has to move, so not really making that much sense really, but this is seemingly the best moves for both players in this position. So another crazy line going on. So instead c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes c3 here was played, and after b takes f3 now Kramnik plays queen a5 with more or less the same threats as we just saw. And here, well, there are a couple of options for white, and I must say that Kramnik had already faced this quite recently in 2011, and in fact the players are going to more or less follow that game. The game is Grishuk versus Kramnik, Russian Championship 2011, if you want to check it. Anand plays bishop b5 here, but let us take a look at a couple of other alternatives for white. For instance, what if knight b5? Well, couple of threats here, for instance knight d6 check, lots of craziness going on. Well, black could take on e4, now there is no check on, I mean the knight is protecting d6 from the check, so it could take back. Now for instance queen d4 could be played, threatening both g7 and the knight, and black would castle probably after queen takes e4, queen takes e4. Black is getting material back with the move a6, and it depends on what white plays here. For instance, if he castles, well, black just takes, and instead, if the more or less the theoretical move here, the move which has been played in GM games, is the move bishop e7, so that after a takes b5. In fact, white is not going to take the rook because his bishop on c4 would be taken. Instead, he plays the intermediate bishop b4, attacking the queen, so that after queen c7, he takes on b5, still not taking the rook, getting away from the attack on c4. So another very sharp position here, I think. Another opportunity for white, instead of bishop b5 check, was to play, for instance, what if bishop takes f6? Well, here once again queen takes c3. The source of counterplay for black is this check on c3, king f1, queen takes c4, king g1, and here two possibilities for black, a couple of possibilities. One of them is okay, the other one is very bad. The natural looking one at the first sight at least could be g takes f6, taking the bishop, but now surprise rook c1, attacking the queen. The bishop on c8 is hanging, and after the check the rook on h8 will be hanging as well, so pretty dim position for black. Otherwise it is much more sound, as bizarre as it could seem, to just castle. And now, for instance, queen g4 attacking g7, g6, and if white tries to checkmate black with queen h4, queen h6, etc., black has the resource of knight d7 attacking the bishop, etc. So as you can see, lots of interesting lines could be could arise from this opening. In the 10th move, as I said, bishop b5 check finally was played by Anand. Now knight b d7. Another move is bishop d7, so that bishop takes, g takes f6, queen b3 is played usually here. But knight b d7 is the game in the game versus Grishuk Kramnik. This is what he played, so probably he has based his preparation, or he's remembering very well this line. We can assume that now bishop takes on f6, g takes after short castle would be really nice for white, as black now lacks serious counterplay. He just cannot let white castle this easily. So that's why after bishop takes f6, first queen takes c3 check must be played, so that after king f1, now black takes on f6. And now sharp position has arisen. Both kings are kind of vulnerable, and really both of the kings are really far from being safe. Both players, I think, knew this very well, this position. There are lots of GM games in this line, so you can assume they are in home preparation. They know what they're doing. But if you give this position to amateur players like me, you can bet lots of decisive games would be played here, with both players having lots of chances to blunder. Now h4 is the main move. That's what Anand plays, with the idea to play rook h3. Well, another possibility, maybe rook c1, attacking the queen, queen b4. What if rook c4 when queen d6? But once again, the queen is has moved lots of times. It's been harassed around, but how to continue this position is kind of unclear for me. I don't know. Instead, h4 well makes the sense of has the logic of develop the rook via h3. Now that white cannot castle anymore. Now a6, rook h3 intermediate, attacking the queen, queen b4. There are 18 games with this move, but there are 45 with queen a5. Now bishop a2, knight c5 is the move, but still Kramnik is keeps playing the moves he played in the game with Grishuk, just relying on his on that line. He plays queen b4, now bishop e2, and knight e5. The knight is centralized. The bishop could go to d7 to complete development, and the knight is well placed here. It could have some active role. h5 was played here, and well, this is this has some logic, I guess, to stop a black knight from retreating to g6, for instance. f5 could be kind of a threat sometimes. I don't know. Once again, rook c1 could be was the game between Grishuk and Kramnik, and well, here it is with h5. This is where Anand deviates. Instead, I said rook c1 was Grishuk Kramnik Russian Championship 2011, where queen d6 followed. Now rook c2, so that after bishop d7, rook d2, and after queen c7, repetition of moves, and the game was a draw. So h5, now queen d6 anyway, and Anand plays queen d2, the official, I guess, novelty of the game. Knight c6, black is trying to exchange those pieces, and looking logical, rook d3. White has a kind of a simple threat to take on c6 and to go ahead to check black on d8, etc., with some nasty consequences for this rook, for instance. That's why queen h2 is kind of an only move, looking for counterplay against white king. For instance, other move which could seem to make some sense could be like queen b4, trying to exchange that one, the queen. After queen takes, knight takes, say rook b3, a5, a3 if knight c6, knight takes, b takes, now rook c1 attacking c6, bishop d7, rook b7. This endgame looks better for white, maybe not winning as yet, but black's pawn structure is really horrible, and white is really in the driving seat here. But queen h2 is very precise move by black, really an astonishing preparation by Kramnik. Now a couple of options for white. Of course, there are the main move, the move played Anand played it's absolutely the best one, f4, so that he has some defense from the check on f2. Another move may seem knight f3, so that after queen h1 the knight can go to g1. But now what about rook g8 attacking g2? Well, you may say bishop f3 defending, that would be true, but now black could play e5, threatening to put the knight on d4 attacking the bishop, and also the bishop on c8. The black bishop now is free to play on the light squares on the diagonal, so white king may be in danger here, so white should be really careful here. Not easy to play this position. And if rook h3 after queen h2, remember, if rook h3, well, queen goes back and black has no problem in repeating moves. That's why f4 seems the better one. Rook g8, of course, queen h1 check, not that great now, because white has king f2, and if queen h4 check, now king g1, there are no more checks, and white still has his threat. And of course, taking the rook, not very advisable, because knight takes c6, and the game is basically over, as if black recaptures on c6. This is checkmate, like this. So after f4, rook g8, another precise move was played by Kramnik. Really astonishing how well he had prepared this line, seemingly. Bishop f3 defending, and bishop d7. Now black is threatening to check on h1 and take the rook, as there is no more checkmate in the d file. The rook is protecting d8, so that's the reason white must be careful here not to get over ambitious and blunder the rook on a1. Anand correctly plays knight e2, and let us take a look at another possibilities. Of course, as I said, taking on c6. Now bishop takes c6, d8 is protected. This would help black a lot. The bishop on c6 is looking good. The other move probably could have been played was knight b3, but since this seems once again drawish, as black has this incredible move knight e5, threatening both the bishop, the rook, and white just cannot ignore that. He must take, otherwise, say a silly move a4, knight takes d3, queen takes d3, now queen takes f4, and black has lots of activity. The bishop could go to c6, rook to c8, the other rook on the open g file, and this is really scary for white. So that after what happens after f takes e5? Remember, the knight was there. F takes e5. Well, bishop b5, pinning the rook, so that after a4, for instance, bishop takes, queen takes, now rook d8. If queen c3, for instance, queen takes with e5, with yet another imbalanced and rather unclear position, but should be enough for black to at least to draw, I think. Well, and finally, just to mention, after bishop d7, white just cannot pass the move, say a3, stupid move, queen h1 check, king f2, queen would take on a1, as now there is no checkmate anymore on the d file, as I said. If knight takes, bishop takes, both d7 and d8 are protected, so black is winning, basically, rook and the pawn up. That's why after bishop d7, Anand decides to play the knight e2 move. And here, well, you could see Kramnik hesitating just for a while, but it is clear he knew more or less this is a draw. He had this prepared, I guess. queen h1 check, knight g1, and now very impressive move, knight d4. Well, what to do? The obvious move is rook takes d4. This is what happened in the game. Let us take a look at alternatives. A4 for instance, but just it's clear white cannot ignore the knight on d4. Now what would happen? Well, knight takes f3 is the move. What you take it with? Of course, taking with g, not very advisable once again. Now queen takes g1, and this is checkmate. So what if white takes with the rook? Rook takes f3. Now bishop takes a4, so that white takes on a4 with the rook, and the rook is not guarding the back rank anymore. This is important, as we will see now. Now rook d8. Remember that g2 still must be protected with the queen. So for instance queen a2, but now incredible tactics here, nice. Rook takes g2, and if queen takes g2, rook d1 check. That's why the bishop was sacrificed on a4 to force the rook out from their back rank. Now if king e2, well, queen takes g2. If king f2, now rook d2 check. If knight e2, rook takes e2, king takes, queen takes g2, and this is a queen versus 2 rooks, but black has 3 extra pawns, so this should be winning. As you can see, as you can guess, better said, Kramnik had all this prepared, and Anand, I guess, more or less could see all this as well. So that's why he takes on d4 after this nice looking knight d4. Rook takes d4, and now finally I'm going to reveal the result of the game. The game is going towards a draw. Bishop b5 check, king f2, queen h4 check, king e3, and now another nice move, e5, attacking both the rook and the f4 pawn. Now f takes e5, but it allows black to go to the g5 square with the queen to finish the game with queen g5 check, king f2, check on g3, etc. Repeating moves and shaking hands to sign the draw. A very beautiful game, in fact, with both kings in the center and lots of tactical possibilities, very crazy lines, and balanced and sharp positions arising from a simple queen's gambit. So hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching.